Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. In today's video, we're going to be continuing Spy X Family Project W.E.B. What If Loid Forager was Spider-Man Noir, Season 1, Part 6. As always, if you're new to the channel or if you're a regular and like what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Where we last left off with our series in Part 5, we entered into the second half of Season 1 of Spy X Family. As you know, Season 1 is 25 episodes that was divided into two halves. And now we continue on into the second half of the story. In the last of events, Anya and the family ended up getting a new dog added to the Forager home. Also, with help from Anya, as well as Unlikely in the form of Yor, along with her old-time associate Natasha Romanoff, and a under-the-weather Loid, they managed to, in their own way, stop what could have been an international incident that could have led to war. However, despite overcoming one hurdle, they now see that there are more on the horizon, as each family member does their best to contribute not only to the family happiness, but to the safety of the world. Without further ado, let's get into today's video, so as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Yor had been coming home late. Of course, this wasn't by accident by any means. Of course, Loid had his worries. After all, as a well-trained spy, it was his job to notice the peculiar and things that would often go unnoticed. However, to Yor's own credit, she was so airheaded and ditzy that for Loid, he was able to overlook most matters, as they were little more than just the whims of his wife. Of course, he still had help around the home, that being in the form of their nanny, Natasha Romanoff. Of course, Loid did a thorough background search, and for Natasha's own credit, and for her own means, everything came up relatively on the up and up, nothing to be suspicious over. Natasha was just a good friend of Yor's, and Yor had plenty of those at work, so this wasn't anything that Loid wasn't too uncommon with. Besides, it was because of one of those friends, that being in the form of Camilla, who was helping with Yor's cooking skills, or lack thereof. So maybe this was just a sort of banding of community, if you will. Yor's friends attempting to help her through a rough patch. All the same, Loid was able to keep focused on his other priorities, but still, he made sure to keep an eye out, never knowing what could come at any moment. As far as Natasha was concerned, her helping to take care of Anya and help around the house with Loid wasn't just so that she could ease the burden off of Yor. It was also because you never knew when Taskmaster or his forces might strike. Of course, Yor wasn't just out doing cooking lessons. She was actually training. You see, when Yor took up being an assassin, for the most part, her skills had pretty much stayed where they were. She hadn't really done much in the form of training or in the forms of improving in any way or shape, primarily because anyone she came into contact with wasn't really anyone that she had to worry about. Yor never had a reason to have to improve, but going up against the former widows, now turned taskmasters, and the actual taskmaster himself, she had all the more reason to train. It took the combined efforts of both Natasha and Yor just to beat one, and for every sort of taskmaster that they beat, the others would just be far stronger the next time around. If they were going to win and survive this, then they were going to have to up the ante when it came to their skills. And for Yor, it didn't just mean improving in the kitchen, it meant improving when it came to using another set of blades. Of course, though, That wasn't the only drama going on that side of the family. There was also Frankie, who was still using his alias Peter Parker. Of course, this was done for newsworthy purposes, and those at the Ostania Bugle understood. The boss, J. Jonah Jameson, who had to do some similar work in his own line of duty after all. However, Frankie had called out Loid for a different reason. He had fallen in love. Of course, Loid wanted to just leave and go home right then and there, because the last thing he had to do was indulge Frankie in some other harebrained scheme he had gotten himself stuck in. But when Frankie threatened to expose Loid's secret, causing the tired but ever-vigilant spy to give him a death glare, Frankie would only be kidding at this, but still, he needed help. After all, Loid was the man of 1,000 disguises, who could charm any woman in any given situation. Of course, though, when it came to Loid, it wasn't like that was something he took pride in. He only did it for the sake of his mission. In the end of the day, figuring out a woman, it was nothing more but a formula, a science, if you will. Something that, given enough time and training, anyone could do. Women were easy to figure out, even easier to understand. As long as you were able to gauge their nature, their true desires and intent, there wasn't anything you couldn't get from them. But of course, Frankie didn't have those kind of skills. The woman in particular was a girl named Betty Brant, who also worked at the Ostania Bugle, working in one of the beat rooms for the news press. Of course, Frankie, despite the many tips and tricks that he had gotten from Loid, was unsuccessful in his pursuit of love. But still, Loid couldn't fault him for it. In the life that they lived, it was hard not to fault him for his feelings. Spies are very tricky beings. They do a job that gets them no credit, no fame, no fortune. Truth be told, the good spies are the ones you never actually hear about. They're little more than rumor. A spy knows he's done his job well when the world runs and remains the same. It's only when the world goes to hell does a spy truly realize that he's failed. No, spies were faceless, anonymous. They were never to be seen, nor never to be heard. And yet for Loid, he found himself not only playing the role of a spy, but also the role of a superhero. As he continued venturing on as the Spider-Man of Ostania, many people continued on in their theories and thoughts about the web slinger. Of course, there were those who still had their reservations, not knowing who he truly was or his true intent. But the more good he did, the more he was being recognized. Even the government of Ostania had to credit him, as if it weren't for the efforts of the Spider-Man, there were some innocents that could have been lost in the process. But still, they had to remain vigilant. For all they knew, this could just be one big ruse by the West, or worse, it could potentially be the work of Hydra. They had to stay on guard at all times, and Loid couldn't fault them for that either. But how about Anya? How was she doing? Well, Anya continued on in her own mission. Her mission to get close to the second son, Damien Desmond, and to get to his house, for Papa's sake. For Anya, her mission was never ending, never relenting, and some other big words that she couldn't figure out at the moment, but still, what she was doing was for world peace. Of course, that was easier said than done, as Damien was not one to get along nicely, especially with Anya, given their short but rather tumultuous history together that started with some name-calling and resulted in Damien getting punched in the face and knocked into a pile of trash. Yes, safe to say, being friends with Damien Desmond would be a lot easier said than done. But all the same, Anya was going to do her best. For today in the class, they were going to be doing arts and crafts, where they were going to be making papier-mâché animals. and the students would be partnered up at random. Anya getting partnered up with Damien, and the two of them not seeing eye to eye at all, as Damien only had the focus of doing his absolute best in hopes of being noticed, hopefully finally by his father for his hard work. In the meantime, Anya's friend Becky would find herself swooning. She had seen a picture of Anya's family and of Loid, and the girl had fallen head over heels in love. For her project, she chose to make a model of Loid that came with multiple different paper-like costumes. Of course, the headmaster was, while impressed by her, going to dock her points because it was supposed to be about making animals. However, Becky would look coldly to the headmaster. "You know, headmaster, Papa says that humans are also animals, and that mankind make up the most dangerous predators and prey." The headmaster couldn't fault that logic, and he also felt a tad bit disturbed. After all, when it came to hunting, the Kravinoff family spared no expense, and it was said that they didn't just deal in the hunting of prime and game animals, but that they also took up bounty hunter work for the government, and whenever there was someone that had to be tracked down, the Kravinoffs were who were called in, because they never missed the mark. As for Anya, as she was working with Damien, the two would make pairs of griffins, the symbol of not only the academy, but of the country of Estonia. Of course, for Damien, he didn't think his griffin came out all that well, despite his best efforts, and for Anya, whatever she made, he expected them to be the mockery of the entire school, and to be the jokes for the rest of the year. However, the adults and others in the administration didn't see it that way. Instead, they were actually truly impressed with their work, so much so that the two ended up winning first place. Of course, there was a lot of pressure in the air. After all, midterms were just around the corner. For the top two students in each grade, they would receive a Stella Star, but failing would earn you a Tonitrus Bolt. And seeing as how the students were going to be tested in 4 subjects, for each subject failed, that would be a bolt received. Anya already had 1 bolt. If she failed all 4, then that would be a total of 5 bolts. And by the time the finals came around, if Anya failed all of those, well, expulsion was all but guaranteed. And to make matters worse, Anya, after checking in with her father, would figure out that soon the new moon was going to come. When it came to Anya and her powers, one time every month, her ability to read minds would vanish from her. It was during the event of the new moon. She wasn't entirely sure as to why that was the case. It was something that had to do with the experiments she had gone through when she was just a lot younger. But all the same, she wouldn't be able to rely on her skills in that moment, meaning she was actually going to have to study. And studying was a lot easier said than done. Loid tried his best, but he eventually got called into work. That's when Yor had the idea of calling in 2 good people that she thought could be of great help. That being in the form of her brother, Yuri, as well as her friend, Natasha. The two would help Anya with her studies. Yuri doing so because he believed that he could get Yor's good favor, and Natasha because, well, she already helped out with everything else, so helping with this couldn't be too hard. Although, if that's what they believed, then they were in for a rude awakening. However, all hope wasn't lost. Natasha was starting to get an understanding about how Anya's mind worked. The girl wasn't bad. It was just that she had to be more focused. She couldn't just be jumbling her information to everywhere and everything all at once. No, they had to take their time with this. And on top of that, It was easier when she talked about subjects she actually liked. For example, using cartoons. When it came to her first favorite TV show, Bond Man, using mathematics, she was able to deduce how many bullets Bond Man had in his gun, or how many enemies he'd have to take out, and in what order. When you apply that to math, Anya's math actually improved. When it came to something like physics, there was that web superhero, Web Man. It took using physics to understand how he was able to swing through the city using his webbing. And when you applied those physics to regular physics, Anya was able to do decently well. It was just a matter of finding what motivated Anya, taking their time and figuring out her strengths and weaknesses. Even if she couldn't get the Stella badge that she really wanted, right now the main focus was making sure that the girl didn't fail. Even though it was long and grueling, Yuri and Natasha did the best that they could. Eventually, the day of the test would come. Loid would be standing over the school building. He waited as all the students would file out. Of course, he wanted to have hope in Anya, but then there was that sinking feeling in his stomach, and he realized they were doomed. No, the only thing he could do, for the sake of the mission, was to break into the school itself to find Anya's test scores, and if necessary, to change them. Loid would disguise himself as a professor. There were some things that only Agent Twilight could do. Not Loid Forger, and not even Spider-Man. Besides, if Spider-Man was caught snooping around on Eden College's campus, then that wouldn't be good for his hero-like image. After all, using the Spider-Man persona allowed him to fight against superpowered or common criminals on the side, and sometimes get other key information and details that he couldn't get being Twilight. Using his disguise, he moved across the student campus. However, he would realize he wasn't alone. There was another shady individual, a man dressed in a tracksuit, his dirty blonde hair kept under his hat. This man's name was Clint Barton, an agent of the East. However, he was known by many code names. There were two, however, that he held with great pride. First, the Hawkeye. He was a sharpshooter, not just with a gun, but with his preferred weapon, a bow and arrow. And he would soon earn the name Daybreak. He had heard about the espionage and about the voyages of the spy known as Twilight, and was rumored that he was in this country. The great spy of the West versus the spy of the East. Twilight versus Daybreak. For Barton, he thought that this was going to be his moment. This was going to be his opportunity to show the world what a true spy was capable of. Of course, Barton didn't nearly have the finesse, if you will, like Loid had. Loid having to almost clean up behind Barton every step of the way before the two were finally able to get inside of the vault. After using a fake badge, getting himself, and by extension getting in Daybreak as well, the two made their way inside where the students' test papers could be found. As Loid opened the door, disguised as the elderly professor, ready to walk in, he felt his spider sense go off, Barton ready to club him from behind and knock him out. However, Loid would catch his arm at the last moment, throwing him across the room as the two would stand toe to toe. What the? You're just supposed to be an old man. There's no way you could have actually countered me unless... Seems I wasn't the only genius who had the idea of breaking in here. So, who are you? Foreign Affairs? Another spy agency? Let me guess. You guys heard about the famed and the ever-growing power that was Daybreak, and you just couldn't help yourselves but to see me in action. Well, I don't mind appeasing you all, although, unfortunately for your superiors, the only thing that's going to be left is a body. The two would engage in hand-to-hand combat. Loid, disguised as the elderly professor, would hold his own against Barton. Barton realizing that in the closed spaces, he didn't have the advantage at all. Not bad, old man, not bad. Wait. There's no way that they would send an elderly man to do a mission like this. And there's no way that you would actually be a professor here. You're wearing a disguise. So, is it that obvious? You even disguise your voice. You really do sound gruff and old. I don't know who you really are, but if you were able to get this far, then it's obvious that you can only be Twilight. Am I right? So, it seems you figured me out. Daybreak. Oh my god, yes! I can't believe it! We're actually going to have a showdown! Daybreak versus Twilight. This is going to be one for the books. Well, unfortunately, they don't write books about spies, but I'll make sure to write it down. It'll be a fine footnote in my history. You're very confident. But you and I both know that things may not go as well as you think. If we're both caught here, then that'll be the end of us. So tell me, why are you trying to break into the school's vault? Well, isn't it obvious? I got contracted to do so. I'm trying to find the papers for these Desmond kids. I'm supposed to change them. Desmond? The children of Donovan Desmond? Of course. But wait, you're supposed to be a spy from Ostania. If that's the case, why would you go against the head leader of Ostania? Are you a traitor? Well, of course not. You think I'm doing this because I want to? I'm only doing this because there are other political rivals in Ostania that want to see the Desmond family go down. Besides, you're asking me this, but why are you here? What on earth could Westalis possibly want in the affairs of Eton College? I have my own reasons for being here. It has nothing to do with the college. It's obvious we're not after the same mark. There's no reason for us to engage. Huh, that's what you think. I'm gonna use you as my claim to fame. Nah, today's the day you go down, Twilight. There's no getting around that. The elderly man would get into a stance. Fine, if that's the way you want it. But it will only end in failure. Of course, the battle did not go the way Daybreak expected. And for Twilight, he knew that if this dragged out for too long, then they would both end up getting caught. So he decided to do what was best. He faked dodging an attack and then feigned ignorance, allowing for Daybreak to get the jump on him and pretended to be knocked out. Afterwards, he let Daybreak do whatever he was going to do before finally dipping. Daybreak thinking that he had gotten one up on Twilight. But for Twilight, well, this was just the easier path. Sometimes it was better to fake a defeat than go for a real victory. It wasn't even that Daybreak was even that bad. He was actually pretty good. Daybreak. Twilight wondered what information he could get on him. While he was still a bumbling idiot, he had pinpoint accuracy, as seen when he picked up a desk drawer full of pins and started throwing them like they were throwing darts. If it hadn't been for his spider sense and his quick reflexes, a few of those pins could have been pelted directly into his neck, and that could have been very misfortunate. He definitely wasn't one to be taken lightly. But still, in the end of the day, Twilight knew what he came for. After undoing all of the reckless damage that Daybreak did after he escaped from accomplishing what he felt was a successful mission, Twilight would then find Anya's papers. To his surprise, the girl didn't fail. She didn't pass with flying colors by any means. In fact, the girl only barely ended up passing, but still she passed all of her assignments. In the end, he decided he wasn't going to stifle over her hard work, although they were going to have to work harder. The next day in school, the students will all gather around the announcement board to see where they placed in their respective class. Damien placed 11th, Becky placed 42nd, Anya 213th. Definitely nowhere near the top, but she wasn't at the bottom, and to her credit, she passed. All the students were grateful for getting through, but they knew that they still had a lot of work ahead of them if they were going to get where they needed to be. But there was one student that stood above them all. Although, honestly, given who he was, it was no surprise. And the number one spot was to be expected. Of course, when Anya came home, she would show off her grades, truly being impressed with her handiwork and for what she had managed to do. While Loid was happy for Anya, and happy that they had avoided failing for now, one thing was certain: getting a stellar star through good grades definitely wasn't going to be the path of success. But for now, they had avoided failure. For Loid, he had learned to take the small victories wherever he could find them. As the family would get ready for dinner, Natasha would bid her goodbyes to Yor, telling her to make sure she continued her training, and she promised to see them all in the morning. As Natasha went back to her apartment, she readied a bath for herself, as she would go and pick up the phone, as she had a phone call to make. Took you long enough. What do you want, Natasha? Someone's in a bad mood. What's wrong? Did our poor little Hawkeye get rejected again? What the? No! First off, I didn't get rejected. I rejected her, thank you very much. And second of all, I'm pissed. I got screwed out of a mission and now the clientele doesn't want to work with me anymore. A mission? Yeah, I had to break into Eden College and change some grades around. Changing grades? Of who? The sons of the Desmond guy. Donovan Desmond? Who on earth would try to target his kids? Oh, come on, you know how this game works. Everyone's got enemies everywhere, especially in politics. But all you had to do was break in and change some grades. What could have gone wrong? You're never gonna believe it. I ran into this guy disguised as an old man. It was Twilight. No kidding. The Agent Twilight? Yeah. Did you actually get to see his real face? He was disguised as an old man. Of course I didn't get to see his face. But it doesn't change the fact that I know it was him. I know he's the one that screwed me over. I shouldn't have just tried to knock him out. I should have dragged him in and tried to get a reward for him. Well, he is Twilight, Master of Disguises. From what I hear, no one's been able to see his real face. It's nothing to feel bad about. But still, if I had my bow and arrows on me, there's no way I would have lost. Anywho, what are you gonna do now? Well, I got other clientele and I got other missions I can take. What about you? You guys holding up okay? Yeah, we're fine, for now. I was able to find Yor again. I've even got her to get back into training. Still, you guys need to be careful. If Hydra truly is working in the shadows, I know. We're gonna need all the help we can get. Have you made any progress on finding where he is? I actually have. He's being held in an isolated prison. somewhere up in the north. Getting him out shouldn't be much of an issue. If you can get some fake IDs going, he's definitely going to need to lay low. I think hiding out in Estonia for a bit might be the best fit for him. Yeah, I'm really thankful to you. Who knows? Maybe this won't end up like Budapest after all. Really? You and I remember Budapest very differently, Natasha. But I also have a new target. Have you heard about the bounty? The bounty? Yeah. The heads of that gang. The one that's been getting screwed over by that spider guy. The Spider-Man? They actually put a bounty on his head? Well, the boss is out of town. At least that's what my sources say. Currently, their operations are being ran by Hammerhead. I see. And you actually want to try to claim that bounty. It's just a little pocket change. Some life-altering pocket change, but pocket change nonetheless. Besides, he's nothing but a creep in a mask that swings around on a web. Of course I can take him down. Be careful. You often bite more than you can chew. Even the famed Hawkeye has his limits. Natasha, you forgot who you're talking to. Once I have someone set on my sights, I don't miss. This concludes Spy X Family Project W.E.B. What If Loid Forger was Spider-Man Noir, Season 1, Part 6. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Neon Genesis Evangelion, The Spire's Thesis. What if Shinji Ikari was Spider-Man? Part 6. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.